Welcome to Holstein World's Expo Newscast. I'm Sarah Schmidt. As you can see, we've changed locations for today's newscast. We are currently at the Sheraton Hotel in Madison, Wisconsin, enjoying the Party at the Planet. Yes, that's right, the Planet Holstein Sale is going on just behind the camera. But let's take a look at today's headlines. The champion brown Swiss cow was named today. The show was judged by Callum McKinven of Quebec and Richard Landry, also of Quebec. For their selection of champion of this year's Central National Brown Swiss Show, it's Old Mill JP Gracie T, shown by Peter Vale and Ken Main of Copake, New York. And reserve grand champion honors would go to Jody Prestige Kalua, shown by Jody Capini of Tillamook, Oregon. Let's take a look as Judge McKinven selects his champion.
Roaring applause for this senior champion cow. She's going to be a grand champion. She's really my kind of cow. And boy, when she came into class, and this other cow that followed her, it's going to be reserved. Those two cows came in, I just said, wow, what a pair of cows. And just tremendous to have the opportunity, guys, to judge this caliber. And for honorable mention, we got a beautiful intermediate champion, a beautiful reserve, but I can't get away from this dairy cow right here. This honorable mention senior champion will be honorable mention grand as well. She's just pure silk and dairiness all the way. Congratulations, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
The International Guernsey Show began today with the heifer classes. The judge for this year's show was Mr. Lynn Harbaugh of Wisconsin. He was joined by his associate, Mr. Paul Trapp Jr., also of Wisconsin. For their pick of junior champion, it would be Cooley Crest Child Genie E.T., shown by Josie Morris of Lake Mills, Wisconsin. And reserve junior champion honors went to Naps Hill Point C Tipster E.T., shown by Justin Chupp of Enola, Oklahoma. The Grand International Red and White Show also began today with the heifer classes. The judge for this year's show is Mr. Brian Carskadden of Ontario, and his associate is Mr. Quim Sarabosa Villa of Spain. Their pick for junior champion would be MD Hillbrook Sunburst Red ET, shown by Chris and Jen Hill, Fred Strauss, and Tim Merworth of Thurmont, Maryland. And reserve junior champion would go to Tem North Camden Dixie Red, shown by Richard Green of Middletown, Delaware. Now I'd like to take you to a special interview that we had. Miss Kathleen O'Keefe with Holstein World went out to the barns to visit with her friend Norm Nabholz.
We're here with Norman Nabholz of West Union, Iowa. Norman certainly is a familiar figure to many of you across the show barns and sale rings in North America. Norman owns and operates prestigious Nabholz Farms, who has owned, handled, sold, marketed more grand champions at World Dairy Expo than any other breeder exhibitor. I believe it's 16, is that right, Norman?
I believe that's correct.
The running total so far. Norman is a renowned judge. He judged earlier this week at World Dairy Expo, one of 4 or 5 times he's judged in the big ring here. He's certainly a familiar figure at many show rings across the country and Canada. He also is a very popular pedigree reader at sales, again, across the U.S. and Canada. And now, adding to those titles is that of published author. Norman, earlier this year, produced Millionaires in the Cornfield, the glory days of the National Dairy Cattle Congress. For those of you who remember the years of Waterloo being the reigning show here, World Dairy Expo has kind of overtaken that in the past 30 or 40 years, but for many years, the show in Waterloo was the place to be and the place for the best cattle in the country to congregate. So, Norm, what gave you the idea to undertake writing a whole book on the history of some of the greatest breeders in cattle for the very first part of the century?
Well, Kathleen, I think there was the show, the big time show at Waterloo ended in 1965, and so I wanted to do it while the people that had showed there were still around and could give us input into the show. So I guess time was of essence, so that's why we did it now, and it's been great. It's been fun.
But I'm curious if you had any favorites of some of those old-time herds or people you considered mentors that it was enjoyable to sit and visit with.
Well, the mentor part, Max Gordon was a guy that gave me a lot of breaks when I was a young guy, and then Lou Porter also is a guy that gave me a lot of breaks. But my favorite chapter of the whole book was about Curtis Candy in Illinois, and it's just in doing the research, it was remarkable and something that will never happen again ever. So it was a lot of fun.
It is fun. It's a great read. I'll tell you what, for someone like myself, that Waterloo ended just a little bit before I came on the scene. It's tremendous to go back and you recognize those old names and the foundation cows, frankly, of our breed, and the breeders that made the whole show string and whole show circuit possible for so many, many years. We did have quite an event just earlier in September here, which was the 100th anniversary of the National Dairy Cattle Congress. And I have to say, Norman spearheaded the effort to bring back and really repopulate the show this year. In addition, they had the Top 10 sale. Tell us a little bit about your undertaking for that this year and whether you considered it a success when it was all over.
Well, it was a success. Had a lot of people that came that had been there before. Pete Heffering was down from Canada, Stuart Rao from California, and a lot of people that had shown there in the 60s, 50s, and so to have them come back, and one particular note that was, I thought, pretty cool was Darrell Pigeon and his wife had met at the Cattle Congress 50 years ago, and they went right back to the spot where they met in barn number 4, which was the Guernsey barn, and so it was 50 years ago they'd met there, and it was a lot of fun to have them go back and remember the way that it was then. So yeah, it was great fun to have those older breeders come back, and you young kids, that got to come and learn what has made this business so great. So.
The book is available here on the World Dairy Expo grounds at the Bovine Boutique, which is the white tent located just outside the main exhibition hall. It's a great read. If you're interested at all in the history of any of our wonderful dairy breeds, I highly recommend to purchase a copy. Come down to the big tent, and I bet you can even get Norm to autograph it for you personally. So thanks again for your time, Norman.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's been a pleasure.
The talk in the barns this year has been all about how last year's Supreme Champion, Harvey Roy Frosty, still looks amazing. Sarah was able to catch up with Frosty in the barns and learn a little bit about what she's been doing for this past year.
I'm here at the Duckett Holstein String in Building 10. Of course, we needed to check in with last year's Supreme Champion of World Dairy Expo, Harvey Roy Frosty. I just want to give you some stats from Frosty, what she's been up to in the last year. When she got back to the farm after the show, she went into an IVF program. Duckett Holsteins are a day center for Transova Genetics and their IVF program, and they were able to retrieve 12 pregnancies from the IVF work they did on Frosty. Those pregnancies are going to be calving this fall. They are sired by Atwood, Alexander, Damien, and Super. Frosty herself calved on July 10th. She had an Atwood bull, and he's going to be heading to select sires. She, just 2 weeks ago, went up for Excellent 96, and just this past Saturday, Frosty got the nod, and she is officially Excellent 96 by Holstein USA. In her last lactation, she made 40,000 pounds of milk with 2,000 pounds of fat. She has 5 bulls that are being marketed by AI companies. 2 of those bulls are at CMEX, 1 is at ABS, 1 is at International Protein Sires, and the final bull is at Accelerated Genetics. Those sons are sired by Goldwyn, Shottle, and Stormatic. She currently is holding 4 contracts for sons to AI. Lot 1 on this year's World Classic sale is a first choice female from Gillette Jordan by Frosty, and Lot 1 in the Legends of the Fall sale later this year is a first choice gold chip female. Here we'd like to show you something that quite possibly may have never happened before. This is Harview Dundee Foxy ET. On the same day that her dam went up for Excellent 96, she scored Very Good 89 as a senior 2-year-old. Just an amazing cow in her own right, and now we're seeing she is a proven transmitter. She's certainly going to be one to look for in the show ring tomorrow. The show ring on Saturday. If you have any more questions, we encourage you all to visit Duckett Holstein's website, Check out HolsteinWorld.com, click on our breeder tour, and then look for Duckett Holsteins. Our thanks to Mike and Julie for visiting with me about this information about such a phenomenal cow. I wish you all the best of luck.
You might be able to hear in the background the Planet Holstein sale, which is indeed still going on. We are broadcasting live from HolsteinWorld.com, and if you did miss it, you'll be able to get access to the recorded version and take a look at how some of these outstanding lots sold. Sarah and I were able to stick around and get some footage of the first 2 lots being sold. Lot number 1, a first choice robust female from Larcrest Crimson ET, went for a whopping $35,000. Also, when we take a look at lot 2, the first choice gold chip female out of Ronley Outside Dabble ET went for $39,000, and the male syndicate, the first choice gold chip male, went for a whopping $60,000. So let's take a look at some of that footage.
Fight from Crimson. That's an opportunity. Robust, 3 females picked from, 2 unsexed. Unbelievable opportunity here. You'll have the Bullsteads knocking down your doors with open-end AI leases on this great genomic mating right here. Robust out of Crimson, doesn't get any better than this. Okay, over here, 35, 37,000. At 37, I'm going to get a 7, I'm going to get a 7, I'm going to get a 36,000. At 36,000. I'm at 35, I'm going to get 36,000. I'm going to get a second. I'm going to get a second. I'm going to get a 36,000. I'm at 35, I'm going to get 36,000. And I have 35,000. See Ed.
We're really looking forward to Friday at World Dairy Expo. We'll see the conclusion of both the Guernsey and red and white shows. I would like to point out that dairyshowsonline.com does have complete 1st through 10th place placings of the red and white show, along with professional photographs. Then, following the selection of those champions, will begin the International Holstein Show. It is being judged this year by Mr. Brian Craswell of PEI. We're going to be doing something special and really unique for Holstein World this year and for World Dairy Expo. It's a section that we call After the Class. That's right, we've contacted the expertise of Mr. Tim Abbott of ABS St. Jacobs ABC and Miss Patsy Gifford of the New York Holstein Association. They will be sitting ringside and offering up their comments and analysis of the winners of each of the Heifer Show classes while they walk into the ring for Junior Champion. Please make sure to tune in for that After the Class special section. All you have to do is be here at www.holsteinworld.com. Scroll on down to the video section and start playing. We anticipate the Junior Champions to head into the ring sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. If you happen to miss the After the Class live, no problem. We will be including a link to the recorded version.
And with that, we're hitting the conclusion of this edition of the Holstein World News, and we do want to mention that this newscast is sponsored by Cows Match, and you can find them in the Expo Hall. They'll be located at the Land O'Lakes booth. Make sure you stop by and get some information on a great product. And with that, let's head on into the question of the day.
My name is Rick Dimmer. I'm from Piasta, Iowa with Leola Holsteins. We like to use Alexander Sanchez, Advent Red, and probably some of the nicest young cows we've seen are obviously the Goldwins and the Durham Jet.
Hi, I'm Joe Gibbs from Epworth, Iowa. I'm up here at World Dairy Expo. Some of the nice young cows that we've seen up here, seen a lot of Goldwins that are very pleasing, and Dundees, both of them also for calves, along with some Kites and some Advents.
Valerie Greco from Monroe, Wisconsin. And at home, the sires I like the best, heifers we have as Advent. We've used him on about every cow family we've got, and he's made pretty impressive calves for us. And the cows we've calved in are sired by Damien and Dundee, and we're really impressed with what we see so far.
Yvonne Preter from Scenic Edge Holsteins, Plymouth, Wisconsin. Young cows are sired by Mr. Burns, by Jasper, Goldwyn, and Advent.